Well, hello and welcome to our Bible study time. I'm going to do things a little bit different since we finished up our Isaiah. Before we get into the next book, and I think what we're going to do is Ephesians next. But today I wanted to read a portion of the Passover meal ceremony that families or churches would celebrate. We're getting close to the biblical holiday here of Passover, and I thought this would be a great way to spend some time together as we're moving towards our Easter celebration, and it'll give a little time for some prep for Ephesians as well. So today I'm mainly going to be reading here, and just maybe take a little time to listen to what the Lord has to say in this powerful ceremony that really is talking about our salvation. So I'll do my best to let us know there are different parts that are supposed to be played in this. The mom and the dad, or the patriarch of the event, the host of the event speaks, the female representative leader speaks in a family setting, then the older child, and all of the children are given a chance to play a part in this. But I'll try to make some distinctions. I may slip up here and there. And this Passover meal, again, I can't remember if I just told you this, but it comes out of the traditional sources of the Hebraic Passover celebration. But a fellow named William Bullock is the one who kind of touched the resources up a little bit, and will bring out some thoughts about Jesus in our time together. So let me start. The meal starts the way he's got it set up. The father tells the folks who are gathered at the table what it's all about. So the patriarch starts by saying the Torah. And I assume you know the Torah is the first 5 books of our Bible, and so let's listen to this again. The Torah instructs us to set aside this night to tell our children about the events that resulted in our exodus from Egypt. Our bridegroom king has ordained that the night of the Passover is to be for us a night of watching. For in Exodus 12, verse 27, it says, "Tell them, it is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt, when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses. And because the Lord kept vigil that night to bring them out of Egypt, on this night all the Israelites are to keep vigil to honor the Lord for the generations to come." Then Mom gets up and says, "So let us hasten, beloved ones, before the setting of the sun, and light the candle of Passover and conduct the vigil the Lord has called us to perform." And so we do a candle lighting here. And if there's several tables, a larger family or a church setting, the woman who's hosting the table stands up and lights the 2 candles at the center of the table. And then the women say, "Blessed are you, O Lord, our God, King of the universe, who calls on us to make separation between the holy and the profane. We now light these candles in honor of your Passover." And then the patriarch gets back up. "The Holy One, our God, told us in Exodus chapter 12, 'This is a day you are to commemorate for the generations to come. You shall celebrate it as a festival to the Holy One, a lasting ordinance. When your children ask you, what does the celebration mean to you, you are to tell them, it is the Passover of the Lord. And throughout your generations," he said, "a permanent ordinance." He said, "But what is so special about Passover? Why does the Holy One, our God, want us to celebrate it over and over again, each and every year of our lives? Why in every generation forever are we told to gather our families and friends around us on this night, sit around the table, eat bitter herbs and unleavened bread, and read to each other from this little book?" Well, it's quite a story. Mom gets up. It started long ago on a dark, foreboding night in the faraway land of Egypt. On that prophetic night, the Holy One, our God, stepped out of eternity and intervened in the affairs of man. In a very visible way, on that night, he did something so wonderful, so amazing, so awe-inspiring, that it literally changed the world forever. Up to that moment, the world was totally dominated and cruelly oppressed by one world power, the Egypt of the pharaohs. No army could stand against it. The Egyptian chariot brigades, even the seed of Abraham, the covenant partner chosen by the Holy One to co-labor with him in the process of redeeming the world, was cruelly enslaved by Pharaoh and his people. And then the oldest child gets up and takes a turn. For several generations, the bondage increased in severity, to the point that it appeared that the covenant which the Creator of the universe had made with Abraham, had renewed with Isaac and Jacob, and had kept alive through the blessings poured out upon Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh, was going to be extinguished by the hand of a man. At the appointed time, the Holy One, however, in one night, all that was changed. Then the patriarch gets up again. As Hebrew families of that generation huddled around their table on this night many years ago, the Holy One unleashed upon Egypt a plague so devastating that it brought Pharaoh to his knees. This plague, the death of every firstborn in Egypt, including Pharaoh's own son, not only caused Pharaoh to order our people to leave his country, but also moved the Egyptian people to beg us to go and to shower us with gold and riches that would fund our journey to freedom. And then the matriarch gets up. The resulting exodus of over 2 million Hebrew souls from Egypt, along with a mixed multitude of people from many nations who chose to join our throng, live among us, and serve our God, became the defining events of our nationhood and the down payment of the Holy One on the fulfillment of every promise he had ever made to the seed of Abraham. Because of what happened that very special night and in the days and special generations that followed, we are a people who can boldly testify to all the earth of the awesome redemptive power of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, proclaiming him as the Holy One, our God, who brought us out of Egypt. Then the next oldest child gets up. The Holy One obviously did not intend for the bitter oppression our forefathers suffered in Egypt and the difficult life lessons they learned there ever to be forgotten. He wanted to birth on earth a special people who would feel empathy for and identify with the plight of all subjugated peoples in every generation. An essential component of his grand redemptive plan for creation was to bring forth a people who could testify to all subjugated peoples in all ages about the awesome deliverance he can bring. And then mother gets up, matriarch. The Torah instructs us to tell our children about the Exodus from Egypt and ordains that the first night of Passover is to be a night of watching. In temple times, our forefathers gathered in Jerusalem, stayed up all night eating the meat of the Passover sacrifice, along with bitter herbs and matzah, and retold and marveled at the glorious story of our redemption. The destruction of the temple in 70 A.D. put an end to our presentation of a Passover sacrifice, but it could not stop our celebration of the Holy One's appointed time of deliverance. And the patriarch says, hardly. In fact, all over the world on this very night, millions of people descended from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, along with millions of people who, like the mixed multitude that chose to join the Hebrew nation at the time of the Exodus, are even now gathering around a table just like ours, preparing to eat unleavened bread dipped in bitter herbs, and to retell once again the wonderful love story of the bridegroom of heaven and his beloved bride people. Many will do this by following the order of the traditional Haggadah, that's the Passover meal, a rabbinically approved and enhanced script and ordered service. Others will choose to simply eat the biblical required food and stick more closely to a biblical account. And tonight we will combine different aspects of these approaches. Our goal will be to approach this day not as passive observers, but as active participants. Then the matriarch gets up. We are not here simply to listen to the Passover story. We are here to relive it. We are going to cross the sands of time and travel across the earth and the ages to the land of ancient Egypt. We are going to personally experience what it is like to be enslaved, oppressed, and threatened with extinction. Together we are going to see and marvel at the miracle. We're going to marvel at the miracle of the great deliverance the Holy One has wrought for us. And together we are going to taste the sweet flavor of the bread of freedom. And then the patriarch gets up. And as wonderful as that sounds, we will not by any means be content to stop there. We will not be satisfied with simply marveling at his great works and tasting his wonderful deliverance. We will press on. We will seek to touch the hem of his garment, to inquire concerning and receiving instructions relative to the grand prophetic purpose and destiny for which he has set us free. At the end of our journey tonight lies a new beginning, a new and glorious life as sons and daughters of the living God. So let's get started on the journey, shall we? Step with me through this door. This is the land of the pyramids. This is the land of the great Nile River. This is the land of the pharaohs, the land of fascinating culture, and of descendants of Abraham and of Isaac and Jacob, the land of cruel bondage. Then matriarch gets up. Why are we taking this journey? Because on Passover, it is the responsibility of every man, woman, and child to personally experience deliverance wrought for our ancestors by the hand of our holy God. The patriarch says, the Passover you see is not just an event that happened a long time ago to strangers. The Passover is a very important part of who we are. It is programmed into every aspect of our lives by our God. In each generation, in each individual life, we relive the glorious redemption over and over again, every day, every week, every year of our lives. As we wrestle with life, with secular societies, with pagan mindsets, and with the darker side of our own souls, we are constantly about the business of being delivered from the tyrant by our God, and of starting over with nothing of value but our covenant relationship with him. We are thus constantly being led by the Holy Spirit through the stages of the eternal journey from bondage to freedom. Then the oldest child gets up and says, in connection with the experience of leaving Egypt, the Holy One made an indelible mark on our souls. We can never stop doing it, for if we ever stop exiting Egypt, our lives lose their meaning. Therefore, we retell the story of Passover. We come face to face with who we really are and with the very reason for which we have been placed here on earth. Then the matriarch gets up. Imagine being totally immersed against your will in the death obsession, materialism, and paganism of the place called Egypt. Imagine being born, living out your entire lives, and dying as slaves to a cruel tyrant. Imagine a life of back-breaking labor from which there is no rational hope of escape. Imagine feeling totally cut off from abandoned by God. The oldest child says, Imagine being forced day after day to make massive bricks and transport and arrange huge stones in store cities of Egypt. The next oldest child. Imagine feeling the crack of the whip of an Egyptian taskmaster. Imagine the humiliation and the torture our ancestors endured. Then the next child. Imagine the hatred and hostility of the Egyptians who feared our ancestors, who would grow too numerous and too strong and would fight against Egypt in the event of a foreign invasion. Then the matriarch says, imagine the sense of hopelessness, despair, and desperation that our ancestors knew for generations as babies were ripped from their mother's wombs and slain on the birthing stool or torn from their mother's arms and thrown into the Nile just because they were Hebrew and male. If you can imagine these things, you have taken a critical first step towards understanding the great miracle that the Holy One wrought long ago in Egypt. And if you can imagine these things, you are well on your way to discovering the special purpose and destiny to which the Creator of heaven and earth, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is calling you at such a time as this. Then the patriarch gets up. Jesus of Nazareth observed this festival every single year of his life. Luke tells us every year Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of Passover. Matriarch gets up. It was in the course of the Passover celebration that Jesus, in Jesus' 12th year, that he stayed behind in Jerusalem when his family began their return to their home in Galilee. He sat in the temple among the rabbis, astonishing them with his insight and with his response to their Torah questions. The patriarch gets up. And many believe that the last meal of the Messiah's life was the Passover meal, much like the one we are now preparing to enjoy. As the time for the Passover in the year in which Jesus became our Passover lamb drew near, we are told by Matthew, at the approach of the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Where do you want us to prepare for and eat the Passover?" And he said, "Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, 'The teacher says, my time is at hand. I am to keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.'" Of course, the disciples did as Jesus instructed, and they prepared a Passover meal. What happened next, known in Christian scholarship as the Upper Room Discourse of Messiah, is described in all four gospel accounts in varying amounts of detail. What happened on that very special night? What exactly did they meet? What exactly did they meet in the upper room to do? Let's step back in time now and join the Master and the 12 in the upper room that night. And then the matriarch gets up. As the gospel account of John describes the experience, the Master, knowing that his hour had come and that he was leaving this world to go to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. It was on this night, a night like no other, that the Master made the stunning statement, "No longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends, for all things that I heard from my Father I have made known to you." And the patriarch gets up. It was in the upper room on that very special night that the Master let down his guard and spoke and acted most openly, tenderly, and intimately with those he loved and had called. On this night he went to each of them one by one, knelt in humility before them, and washed their feet. On this night he showered them with love, spoke to them of love, taught them the essence of love. And he showed them what true love looked like. So come with us and let us go up to the upper room, to be with the Master on this last night of his life, and let us see what we can learn from observing how he spent his last precious hours with his dearest companions. The matriarch says, imagine the melodic chanting of ancient blessings sung in the Hebrew tongue, declaring the glory and goodness of the covenant faithfulness of the God of Abraham and of Isaac and of Jacob. Imagine the emotions that flooded the men as they spoke the ancient patriarchal names. The one we know as Abraham, they knew as Avraham, meaning father of a great people. The one we call Isaac, to them Yitzchak, meaning he shall laugh. The one they called Jacob, they called by his real birth name, Yaakov, meaning he will supplant. These were not just historical figures to these men. They were their blood relatives, the beloved and fondly remembered patriarchs of their family. The patriarch says, one of the first ancient blessings they would have sung in the upper room on that very special night would have been the Kiddush. And the Kiddush is where I'm going to stop right here. It's the first cup, the cup that is poured out, and it's called the cup of sanctification. So in a sense, this is where the meal begins. And so we'll look at the meal our next time together. I hope this has been a wonderful thing for you. I've always enjoyed doing this, and my family a number of times has celebrated Passover like this. And it's been some special times, but it's just a powerful message that goes along with this very special occasion of remembering God working salvation out in the world. Well, you have a blessed week. I hope to see you Friday for devotion time and Sunday as we worship together, either at Family Life or here on the internet. Bye now.